Hello everyone, and welcome to Learning Lore. I have been playing Call of Duty Zombies since World at War. I mean, I was like 10 years old when I first played Nacht or Untoten after completing that amazing downfall mission, having Reznov say, "Dmitri, we have won!" I forget actually what he said, to be honest. And then you see the cutscene roll, and then your brother goes to the bathroom, and you're just sitting there looking at the cutscene, and all of a sudden, zombies. Nacht or Untoten. Oh my god. That was my first experience with Call of Duty Zombies. And at first, I was like creeped out. I remember feeling like what is this? I was not expecting it. I didn't know at the time that Zombies was in the game, and I suppose the developers didn't really want you to. And I didn't play it at first. I actually didn't really get into Zombies until the Der Riese map pack came out. And that's when I actually started playing Zombies. And I played Der Riese for quite a bit. And then I went back, of course, and started playing Verruckt and Shi No Numa, with Verruckt actually being like one of my favorite maps now. And when Black Ops 1 came out, I dove into that game. And I still remember the leaked footage before the game came out. There was just a guy walking through the MPL room with the MPL in his hand, shooting some zombies. And that was like, oh my god, I cannot wait to play this game. And I spent hours on hours on hours playing Black Ops 1, but never once looked up a YouTube video. And I know that's really strange for a lot of people because a lot of you guys love watching YouTube videos on zombies. And I mean, yeah, I'm making YouTube videos on zombies, so. But back then, I didn't have that much of an interest in doing that. I liked trying to understand the story through the map, and that was it. I mean, I didn't look up lore. I never truly learned what was going on, and because there's a lot going on that I never knew. I mean, I would occasionally watch a video for an Easter egg, maybe once in a while, but I never cared to myself, at least, really dive deep into the lore of zombies until now, because I'm realizing I know absolutely nothing. The Outside series, as much as I love it, has shown me to be a complete buffoon when it comes to the zombies lore. And this series, Learning Lore, is going to change it. So for those who have never really understood the zombies storyline, you can join in with me and learn alongside me in this series. But for those deep in the zombies community who have known this all along, I hope you'll have me. And if you do enjoy any of it, consider leaving a like down below. It helps me out a ton, and of course it lets me know that you want me to continue this series. But without further ado, let's get into it. So, to start off our lore learning journey, of course, we have Nacht or Untoten. On June 4th of 1945, an Allied plane malfunctions over an airfield and crashes. German army trucks transporting the undead and Element 115 between Group 935 facilities is struck in the crash. The Marines surviving the crash hold out against the undead as long as they can. I mean, the very intro of Nacht or Untoten itself even kind of shows that this is the case. During that intro, you're in the point of view of a soldier which is on the ground, clearly injured, as zombies approach him. And if we go outside the map here of Dr. Untoten, we can take a guess at where this guy would have been. It would be somewhere over here in the grass, just given on, like, the point of view of the plane there in the intro. And of course, well, where did the zombies come from? They all came from this area, where the plane has crashed into the ground, and where there is a truck and a whole bunch of boxes. The convoy aspect of things doesn't really seem to be present, although there is a bunch of trucks scattered along the outside of the map. But of course, there are a few questions to answer here, one of the obvious things being, where did the 115 come from, and why are they transporting it? And to where are they transporting it? And, I mean, not to mention, where are they coming from? This place is supposed to be an airfield, which, I mean, there isn't exactly an airfield here, but we could assume that off here to the right somewhere, there would have been an airstrip. So how does this all make sense? And luckily, we have the Kronorium to help us out. Which the Kronorium is an amazing project that was led by Mr. Waffles, and all of these people you see on your screen here worked on it, and I want to just say thank you to all of you. Because for the guy that is trying to learn the lore and really doesn't know much about it, this is probably the best resource out there. We're going to be using it as sort of our textbook for this series, and of course, we'll be also adding in all of the things that you can find on the maps yourself. And in doing this, it'll allow us to include lore that you can only get from other maps to better explain the lore of World at War. So on June 30th, 1908, a meteor containing element 115 crashes near the stony Tunguska River, and this marks the first time that element 115 has come to Earth. And 13 years later, large deposits of this 115 are discovered near Breslau, Germany, and Dr. Ludwig Maxis, someone who is going to become very pivotal in the storyline, a German scientist, is sent to investigate. And upon his investigation, very shortly after, Maxis forms this Group 935, an experimental organization dedicated to the study of element 115. He tells his scientists that they represent the future of technological advancement and will be pioneers in human discovery. This group, at first, swears to work in secrecy from the respective governments. As Maxis says, we cannot afford to let this power fall into the wrong hands.
Gentlemen, allow me to take this opportunity to welcome you to Group 935. This is a prestigious moment in the history of our race. You represent the future of technological advancement. You are the pioneers of human discovery. In your hands lies the destiny of mankind. You have volunteered to be part of this great experiment, and with that decision comes the responsibility of absolute secrecy. No one is to know what you do, where you work, what our research has uncovered, or what our purpose will be. You will have no further contact with your governments or with your families. Your decision to fully dedicate your lives to Group 935 is absolute. Make your preparations now. A new dawn is beginning for mankind.
Which, the next thing I'm about to say completely breaks this sentiment. Because a whole 8 years later, on November 23rd, 1939, Maxis turns to the Reichstag for additional fundraising, and of course, Germany agrees to this request.
Sophia, this letter is to go to the Reichstag High Command immediately. Gentlemen, it is with the utmost urgency that I draw your attention to the lack of funding being injected into the giant project. While I believe we are close to realizing the ultimate plan, we still have several years of development before it is ready. It would be folly to cut our expenditures so early in our development. We simply do not have enough element 115 to continue the experiments. The test subjects have survived the teleportation, but are currently unresponsive to commands and cannot be controlled. If we are to overcome this obstacle, we need to increase the frequency and size of the experiment. To this end, I suggest we find not only a regular supply of 115, but that we also find a larger conduit to channel the energy. Signed, etc., Dr. Maxis.
Which, there is a lot to unpack there. Some of it we won't unpack until later on in the video, but the important part to further understand the storyline of Nacht and Untoten and why these events took place is when Dr. Maxis says, if we are to overcome this obstacle, we need to increase the frequency and size of the experiment. To this end, I suggest we find not only a regular supply of 115, but that we also find a larger conduit to channel its energy. So it's very clear that these German army trucks are transporting this element 115, most likely to Der Riese, due to Maxis requesting additional funding from the German government, and the German government setting up this supply line for Group 935. But the question still remains, where did it come from? And to answer this, again, we gotta look at the Kronorium. In response to Maxis' request, this statement makes Germany on August 1st, 1940, create two facilities. Kino, a repurposed theater, which of course we'll get to in the next episode, and the asylum facility at the Wittenau Sanatorium in Berlin, which of course we know as Verruckt. There's also two more facilities that were created later on in the year on October 3rd and November 6th, respectively, being the Siberia facility near the Tunguska River, where that first meteor crashed down, and the research facility at Der Riese. The first being Call of the Dead, and the second, well, being Der Riese. And up until this point, these are all of the facilities on Earth that Group 935 has. So it would make a lot of sense that planes were landing here at the airfield of Nacht und Untoten, carrying Element 115 and loading it onto trucks to then be shipped off to Der Riese, and most likely those planes were coming from these facilities, Shi No Numa being one of the big ones that has a massive meteor of Element 115 outside the map. But in reality, Nacht und Untoten really brings about way more questions than it does answer. I mean, there's chalk drawings on the wall. How did they get there? And I mean, at the time that this map released, of course, we didn't know Group 935 existed, and it's probably pretty likely that it wasn't even planned yet because they didn't know that zombies was going to be as big as it was. So in order to answer some of these questions, we have to move on to Verruckt, the Wittenaw Sanatorium. So as I already stated, Verruckt is a facility of Group 935 that is located in Berlin, and you play as Americans in this map, Dempsey, John Banana, Smokey, and a fourth Marine that arrive at the asylum facility to find it overrun by zombies. They fight off the horde as long as they can until Dempsey is the last alive, and he is apprehended by Group 935. Now, obviously, there is a lot of lore here to dive into, but to start this off, let's just answer the question of how did this outbreak happen in the first place? Why are there zombies here at Verruckt? Well, an entry in the Kronorium on September 2nd, 1945 states that temporal rifts begin to affect the asylum facility, and an orderly reports increasing problems with test subjects. And of course, September 2nd is only 4 days before the events of Verruckt, and only 1 day before the outbreak at the facility. And in playing Verruckt, it is very obvious what has happened here. There has certainly been some unethical experiments going on. But then there's the next question to answer, is why are there Americans at the German facility? Right, Group 935 is a German-sponsored group. So how did these Americans get involved? Why are they there at the facility fighting off the zombies? Well, shortly after the events of Nacht und Untoten, it turns out that the Americans know about the situation. I mean, it makes sense considering they had a plane crash and a whole bunch of zombies happened because of it. So America knows at this point that zombies are a thing, and Germany is clearly experimenting with this element. So in order to further understand the experiments that are happening at Group 935, the CIA enlists one Peter McCain to infiltrate the group at Der Riese. And this happens just a mere 13 days after the events of Nacht und Untoten. And although it takes Peter McCain some time, on August 31st, 1945, CIA handler Cornelius Purnell confirms that Peter McCain has successfully infiltrated Group 935, and he is then transferred to the asylum facility at Verruckt. Cornelius suspects Group 935 is losing control of their experiments and sends a Marine recon unit to extract McCain. So it seems that at this point, Peter McCain has been gathering intel for the American government, feeding it on back, and it suggests that Group 935 is kind of losing control of what's going on, which, looking at Verruckt, it seems like that was the case. So in order to try and save Peter McCain, who is deep undercover at Group 935, America sends this Marine recon unit comprised of the 4 people that we can play as in Verruckt: Dempsey, John Banana, Smokey, and a 4th unnamed Marine. But before that Marine recon unit can be deployed to the sanatorium, Peter is outed as a spy and captured by Group 935. He's held at the facility, and when the outbreak occurs, Peter escapes. So these Marines are met with only a horde of zombies to fight off. There is no Peter, and there is no living Germans. And luckily, when Black Ops 3 Revelations came out, we got to get a peek into what might have happened to some of these characters. I mean, we know what happens to Dempsey. He gets captured and later used by Richtofen, which we'll get to in a bit. But here is a radio from one John Banana.
Field report. A quiet retort. The mission has all gone south. It's Johnny here. Smokey is near, most likely with meat in his mouth. We've been here for ages. I ran out of pages, but now have a mic to record. The mission has failed. McCain must have bailed, and now we must fight off the horde. We came to Verruckt with low ammo and luck, and now Smokey's lost his head. We went down the halls, they bit Smokey's balls, and now he walks with the dead. They call me Banana, I worked at a cabana. I rhyme to keep myself sane. Though Smokey is dead, I'm holding his head. which right now is eating my brain.
And this radio makes it very clear that the Marines that fought at Verruckt did not survive. But there certainly are some more questions to answer here about Verruckt, such as the electric traps which are around the map that can be used by the player, and of course the perks, because this is the first time that there is power on a map and perk machines around the map that the player could buy. Well, as for the electric traps, the answer actually lies in the description of the map. On World at War, before booting the map up, it says electroshock therapy. So it seems that the traps are most likely related to some of the experiments that have been going on in the facility. But what about the perk machines? And the truth is, we wouldn't learn about why these medicinal beverages happened until much later on in the story, but because it's relevant, we might as well include it here. In the Kronorium, it states that on June 13th, 1942, as a result of some of these temporal rifts, in 1963 Kino, Monty reaches across time and offers little nudges. One nudge is developing Group 935's Element 115 fused elixirs. They create 4 medicinal beverages known colloquially as Juggernog, Quick Revive, Speed Cola, and Double Tap. And these little nudges from Dr. Monty, which is something that we're not really going to touch on here in this video. We'll learn way more about him later, but these nudges also prompt Group 935 to start development on a weapons upgrade machine, which in Der Riese is the Pack-a-Punch. So these perk machines, which are scattered around the map along with their advertisements, were created by Group 935 with recipes from Dr. Monty. And of course, they are 115 infused, so this is what allows them to give the player some mythical powers, like magically making you reload faster, or of course, the beloved Juggernog, giving you extra health. It's made with real eggs. Well, okay, so up to this point, we have some main characters developing. Group 935 as a character itself, we don't yet know the people in Group 935 other than Maxis, clearly being the head of this organization. And we have some American soldiers, which unfortunately already 3 of them have died. And all we have left is Dempsey, which was captured by Group 935. So we don't yet know what's going to happen to him, although that will become apparent very soon. And lastly, we have Peter McCain, which has escaped the Verruckt facility during the outbreak. But where is he heading? Well, of course, the CIA knows the operation to get Peter was a failure, so his handler attempts to send him a transmission telling him to rendezvous at the Rising Sun facility on September 13th, 1945, less than 10 days later after the events of Verruckt. So in order to further our understanding of the zombie storyline, we need to leave the sanatorium and make our way to the Rising Sun facility of Shi No Numa. According to the Kronorium, the events of Shi No Numa happen on October 21st, 1945. Ultimis travels to the Rising Sun facility to recover Richtofen's diary. Upon reading it, Richtofen begins to form his plan to defeat Samatha. And that just opens a can of worms, which it's going to take a second to unpack. In playing the map, although it's not exactly obvious, if you go to the doctor's quarters section of the map, you can find what could be Dr. Richtofen's diary. It's just a book here open on the table, and although it doesn't exactly have any words in it, this could be the intended story purpose. And it would make sense considering it's in the doctor's quarters and Edward Richtofen is a doctor. Although obviously there is still a lot of questions that need answering. Okay, so first we have to answer the question of what happened to Peter, because we're instantly, well, told here that Ultimis is now existing. I mean, we have these 4 new characters, Richtofen, Nikolai, Dempsey, and Takeo. But what happened to Peter? He was told to come here to the Rising Sun facility, and Shi No Numa is actually the first map which has a radio in it that you can play, and it discusses this transmission exactly.
115, 48, 40.
Receiving this transmission, Peter. If you are not, then all is already lost. You must know by now that we failed to contain the asylum, and that we had to move the experiment here. Location. The numbers will guide you. The giant must remain at all costs. Repeat, Der Riese must remain safe at all costs. The DG2 experiments continue. Might be our only advantage now. Find Dr. Richtofen, Dr. Maxis. Only they may know what's going on. The use of 115 is dangerous at best. I'm not sure how long we can continue here. We've lost most of our best people. I hope you get this. I hope it hasn't happened there too. but I'm almost out of hope.
So why isn't he one of the playable characters? Well, it seems that Peter did indeed get his transmission from the CIA, he parachutes over the top of it, and dies shortly after. So this secret background character that is responsible, essentially, for the events of Verruckt dies before we really get to know all that much about him, and he is seen here right above the spawn room, and you can see his parachute as well. It seems that it has hung him. But we can take a decent look at Peter McCain's face, although it's not exactly high poly, and also the fact that it seems like he is missing an arm somehow. It seems to have been cut off from the elbow down, and it could be theorized that in Verruckt, well, there is a hand found on the power switch, so this could be Peter's. It's very possible that in his escape, he used the power switch and, in doing so, lost his hand. Perhaps bitten by a zombie, he cut it off and escaped the facility. This is something I haven't been able to find some concrete evidence for, so let me know down in the comment section if you guys know any more about this. I'd love to hear it. So, okay, that answers what has happened to Peter, but what about this new crew of Ultimis? I mean, we just got introduced to Richtofen, Takeo, and Nikolai. So who are they? Well, going all the way back in the Kronorium to August 30th, 1925, we can see that Edward Richtofen joined the Illuminati. So very early on, Richtofen was part of the Illuminati, and all of his business was conducted on behalf of them. And after Group 935 was formed by Dr. Maxis, Richtofen was invited to join the group on August 11th, 1936, secretly acting on behalf of the Illuminati. Richtofen was responsible for things like the development of the Wunderwaffe, and on July 2nd, 1939, Maxis and Richtofen began teleportation experiments with the matter transference prototype. And it was even Richtofen who had the first success of teleportation. On December 4th, 1939, during test trial 151, Richtofen and a guy named Dr. Schuster successfully teleport a walnut. And this is the first successful test where the chemical composition of the object is maintained throughout the process. And this happens shortly after Maxis contacts the German government for additional funding. And he reveals to Richtofen that soon Group 935 will be funded by Germany, and Richtofen, of course, thinks this is going to lead to massive defections, and he and Schuster decide to continue their teleportation experiments behind Maxis's back. Well, shortly thereafter, on January 4th, 1940, Richtofen and Schuster conduct their first human teleportation test. Richtofen is so confident in its success, he volunteers himself. Teleported to the moon, he encounters the MPD, an ether pyramid hidden by the Apothecans. Which, yeah, there's a lot going on there that we're not going to learn in this video. That'll most likely be later on in Black Ops 1. But while inspecting this device, Richtofen is electrocuted and begins hearing the many voices of corruption, including that of the Shadow Man. Which again, don't worry about who that is yet. But the device then teleports him to Shangri-La. Corrupted by the dark ether, Richtofen gradually is driven insane by an obsession to find Agartha. So Richtofen is a crazy German scientist now that has been corrupted by the dark ether, and immediately upon this, he renounces his involvement with the Illuminati and abandons his obligation to the Order. Oh, yeah, and this is when they start making the moon base, which will become important later on. Richtofen does not trust Maxis, he does not trust Germany, and he works behind their back, with the one goal in mind, to find Agartha. While Edward Richtofen is continuing his research at Group 935, on November 5th, 1942, Takeo Mizaki is dispatched by the Emperor to oversee the work of Group 935 and Division 9 at the Rising Sun facility, Shi No Numa. And this, of course, is one of the characters we get to play at Shi No Numa. But there's something more going on here. So obviously Takeo is most likely a high-ranking officer of the Japanese military, since he is dispatched to work at the Rising Sun facility and look over a secret organization. But Takeo is a loyal and moral person, unlike Richtofen, for example. On June 15th, 1943, before the events of Nacht and Untoten, after seeing the research that was happening at the facility, testing undead subjects, and most likely sacrificing people, Takeo reports to the Emperor that the work being done at the Rising Sun facility is unacceptable. In turn, on June 24th of the same year, the Emperor orders Takeo to be taken as a prisoner by Group 935 and Division 9, and he is then used as a test subject for experiments. I guess he learned that everyone is disposable in the military. Which, after just doing outside Tag Der Toten and taking a look at the details in those prison cells, seeing some of those quotes on the wall, this really starts to make a lot of sense. And also during this time, the Battle of Stalingrad is raging on in 1942. And during it, Nikolai's brother is killed in the battle. And eventually, on January 16th, Nikolai is captured by German forces, and he becomes a subject in Group 935's experiments, just like Takeo. So there we have it. We have Takeo, Nikolai, and Dempsey all being subjects of Group 935 experiments, all taken prisoner by the Germans. But what exactly were they test subjects of? Well, in the Kronorium, it states that on July 15th, 1945, Richtofen travels to the Siberian facility to do further research on live specimens. And at the time, the test subjects were Nikolai, Takeo, and Pablo, since this was before the events of Verruckt. Pablo is a character that we're not going to get into yet. There's certainly some lore behind him, which we'll learn in later videos of the series. But for now, later on in the year, Pablo was killed. His spleen was removed in experiments, and he died following that procedure. And because of this, and shortly thereafter, them getting Dempsey as an additional test subject, he replaces Pablo. On September 20th, 1945, Richtofen documents the personality traits of his test subjects. Dempsey's intellect seems low, but his will is strong. Takeo is still staring at the floor, muttering what sounds like some kind of proverb over and over again. And Nikolai has recently begun responding to stimuli, but only after injections of a new serum made primarily from vodka. Which makes sense for that guy, doesn't it? And Richtofen notes that their minds have almost entirely been broken, with no memory remaining of who they once were. So it seems that the experiments that are being done on these test subjects is mind control, which would make a lot of sense considering they're trying to make an undead army. They're going to need to be able to have some mind control over that undead army in order to be able to effectively use them. But it seems that Richtofen has a little bit more in plan for these test subjects. But what is so important about this diary that he has, and who is Samatha and why do we have to defeat her? In order to answer this question, we will have to leave these swamps and make our way to the main facility of Group 935. Well, starting with the question of who is Samatha, that one is pretty easy. Samatha is Dr. Maxis' daughter, and on November 5th, 1934, she was born and her mother died in childbirth. I'd imagine having a secret German scientist as a father was not the best way to grow up, and there's things Maxis did to try and make up for this, for instance, giving Samatha Fluffy, a dog which was expecting a litter. But a lot of times Maxis is just too busy for her, and in fact, Samatha is left in Richtofen's care quite a lot. But why does Richtofen hate Maxis and Samatha? On October 1st, 1945, infuriated to learn that Maxis has not been mass-producing the DG2, that weapon system, the Wunderwaffe, that Richtofen has been working on for the past, well, I guess 6 years. Richtofen begins to make a plot to destroy Maxis and Samatha, vowing that he will no longer continue to work his undead army. Which, it's a little bit strange that he wants to destroy Samatha as well, because at this point, he has been taking care of Samatha in the background while Maxis has been working. Then again, he's also been performing experiments on her, so it's not like he's the best guy in the world. But remember that whole MPD thing on the moon? Well, Graf, the head of Griffin Station on the moon, reports to Richtofen that this MPD is nearly ready for use. And he informs him that the device has been powered up and is awaiting a conduit. Richtofen says he will proceed with Operation Shield and dispose of Maxis and Samatha. And on October 13th, 1945, Maxis and Richtofen performed teleportation test trials on test subjects number 3, 4, and 5.
Initiating test number 3. Subject is within the test chamber. Activate power. Oh my God. Do you hold yourself and clean that up? Test number 3. Unsuccessful. Test subject has been reduced to the same state as previous subjects. Clean up the test chamber and recalibrate the system. Let's do it again. Yes, Doctor.
All of them fail, including test 5, where Maxis uses Fluffy.
Edward, tie the damn thing down! We can't have it running around during the test! It's tied down now, Dr. Maxis. Initiating test number 5. Subject is within the test chamber. Activate power. Searching for vitals. No reading, Doctor. The subject has disappeared. Dr. Maxis, we've done it! Don't be foolish! Test number 5 is unsuccessful. Subject has vanished, yes, but has not reappeared at the mainframe. Recalibrate the damn system, now!
At the Test 6 chamber, Samatha sees Fluffy and runs into the teleporter. Maxis, of course, chases after her, and Richtofen seals them both in the test chamber and teleports all 3 of them.
Initiating test number 6. Subject is within test chamber. Activate power. Damn it, Edward! Did you set up the device correctly?
Yes, Doctor. As per your specifications.
If you had done it to my specifications, then it would have worked, wouldn't it? As usual, your incompetence has...
What? Do you hear that, Doctor?
Perk, you fool! Test number 6 is a failure, but the experiment has caused some kind of electrical force energized within the chamber. Well, open the door!
Doctor, I don't think...
Open the door, now!
Daddy, what are you doing with Fluffy?
Damn it, Samantha, I told you never to come in here. Edward, get her out of here.
Yes, Doctor.
What's wrong with her? Daddy, what did you do? Fluffy!
Come back here, Samantha! Stop her! Easy. Come here, Samantha. Good girl, Flossie. Gently, Samantha. That's not Flossie anymore. We must get out of here. What? Edward, what are you doing? Open the door! Edward, open this door now!
I'm scared.
Don't go. Stay by me, Samantha.
Goodbye, Dr. Maxis.
Samatha is teleported to the moon while Groff and Schuster work on the MPD. Running into the MPD, she's drawn inside of it, where she becomes corrupted by the Dark Ether. And Maxis is teleported to the Crazy Place, something that we won't touch on until quite a bit, actually. Richtofen returns to the moon, learning that Samatha is trapped in the MPD. He orders Groff to teleport Maxis there to coax her out of the device. He also warns Groff to keep an eye out for an evil-looking dog. And keep in mind, this happens on October 13th of 1945, less than 10 days before the events of Shi No Numa, the first map where we had hellhounds. And the reason that we had those hellhounds, well, of course, was because of Fluffy. Poor dog, what have they done to you? But we still haven't answered why Samantha needs to be defeated, but the entry on October 13th, 1945, will start to realize this. In an effort to free Samantha, Maxis approaches the MPD and persuades her to come out. Once she does, Maxis gives her an instruction: kill them all. Maxis kills himself and merges with the technology of Griffin Station, while Samantha unleashes the undead upon the base. And at this point, it can be surmised that the rest of the outbreaks at Shi No Numa, Der Riese, and Kino, and all the rest of the maps in the immediate future are because of Samantha. She is the one now unleashing the undead upon everywhere. So, of course, before the events of Shi No Numa, Richtofen returns to Der Riese and awakens Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai. With no recollection of who they are or who Richtofen is, they agree to help him, and the 4 become known as Ultimis. He essentially uses them as a tool to defeat Samantha and find Agartha. I still don't exactly know what Richtofen's diary is and why it's important, and if you guys know any information on it, again, please let me know down in the comment section. I would love to hear about it. But on October 28th, 1945, 7 days after the events of Shi No Numa, Ultimis returns to Der Riese. With his diary, Richtofen plans to use the teleporter to return to the moon and confront Samantha. Unfortunately, the Wunderwaffe DG2 overloads the teleporter and sends them through time, causing Richtofen to once again drop his diary. Clumsy old Richtofen. So I suppose now it makes sense why Samantha is the main antagonist, I suppose, to Richtofen. She is running the show. She's controlling the zombies. And I imagine that Richtofen, who is now corrupted by the Dark Ether and becoming crazier and crazier by the minute, probably believes that defeating her is the key to finding Agartha. There is so much more to learn and unpack in future episodes of Learning Lore. And I can't wait to do it all, but let's take a look around the facility of Der Riese and see where some of these events may have taken place. So Der Riese itself is obviously a weapon factory. It says Waffenfabrik Der Riese, which in German means weapon factory the giant. A giant weapon factory, I suppose? The clock on the wall is stuck at 1:15, and it is very obvious that Group 935 is involved here. Now, this is definitely complete theory, but it appears here at Teleporter A. This is most likely where the events where Fluffy was put inside of a teleporter happened. And the reason I say that is because this is where the animal testing laboratory is. There's a bunch of cages scattered around, and it would make a lot of sense that Fluffy and her puppies were tested on in this part of the facility. It can definitely be theorized that Fluffy was put into the teleporter here, and when she was teleported, the group came down this staircase, through this garage door right here, and walked out towards the mainframe. And it's stated in that radio that Fluffy was teleported inside of a test chamber. So it's very possible that Fluffy wasn't actually teleported to the mainframe, unlike you are normally in the map. But it could also be the case that originally this pad right here was inside of this, well, I guess teleporter machine. I mean, it looks a lot like the other ones. But of course, here on Der Riese, it's used for the Pack-a-Punch. There's also things hidden around the map that kind of hint at the storyline as well, such as these paw prints. And there's actually quite a few of these that are hidden outside the map in places that you would never be able to see. And there's also a few ciphers, such as this one found here in Spawn under the grate. It's written in Illuminati code, and when solved, it reads, "Edward, it's time to kill Maxis." So I suppose Edward's desire to kill Maxis actually started with the Illuminati. They actually wanted him to take down Maxis before he developed this hatred for him. There's a couple other ciphers that are pretty cool, but they're not exactly useful for the story. But there is this one which can be found in the Type 100 room on the ceiling that says, "Faithful servant, observe and report. The seed has been planted. Maxis must not know." The message says it's from IGCS and is addressed to FSER, most likely Edward Richtofen, which again is hinting at the earlier days of Group 935 before Edward Richtofen disowned the Order and left the Illuminati, back when he was working for them and trying to gather intel for the organization. And lastly, we have little hints at Samatha, such as her teddy bear being seen outside the map as a shadow on the wall. And what I suppose is a pretty big hint at Samatha, the flytrap Easter egg. Where shooting that panel activates a hide-and-seek Easter egg, where you can go around and find 4 objects hidden around the map that you can shoot. But that, ladies and gentlemen, has been Learning Lore. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, consider leaving a like down below. Of course, it helps me out a ton, and it'll let me know that you enjoy this series and you want me to continue it. And while you're at it, of course, make sure you're subscribed so you can come back for more, and if you want to watch more of my content, you can click one of the videos on your screen right now. But if not, I'll see you in the next one. Stay awesome, and peace out.